Greetings, everyone. I'm Dr. Michelle Anthony, President of the League of Women Voters, Wilkes-Barre area. On behalf of our Board of Directors, I would like to welcome you to tonight's forum for the 120th State Legislative District. This event is being recorded in its entirety by Service Electric Television and will be broadcast and then posted on YouTube. No part of this recording may be used or distributed by any person, candidate, campaign, or political group for any purpose whatsoever. Candidates may provide a link to the entire forum on their websites to the YouTube video. Many thanks to Gather, a community space, especially Nancy Fry and Will Fry for providing this venue. Many thanks to our league board, all volunteers who are working at this event tonight. Thank you to the candidates for agreeing to meet with us to share their thoughts and positions on a variety of issues that face the 120th. Most importantly, audience, thank you for being here. You are the reason we're doing this forum. We're hoping that the information you glean from tonight will assist you in making informed voting decisions on Election Day or on your mail-in ballot. Our moderator this evening, Dr. Mia Briceño, is a faculty member in the Communication Studies Department at Wilkes University. She does our local league a great service in sharing her expertise and professionalism with us tonight. Dr. Briceño will now briefly review the format for tonight's event. Dr. Briceño.
Thanks, Michelle. What a wonderful turnout. I'm so happy to see you all here tonight. Oh, how's this? How are we doing? How's that? All right. I knew there was going to be some heckling at some point. All right. But it is wonderful to see everyone turn out tonight for the forum. And so I'll go over a little bit of the sort of guidelines that we're going to follow and that I'm going to do my best to keep track of. So the order in which candidates will speak was determined by coin toss. And I do believe Fern won the coin toss, if that's correct. The order then in which questions are asked will be rotated so that the first question will be asked of the candidate who went second in the opening statement. And then the order will be alternated between candidates. Candidates will each be given 1 minute period to introduce themselves and give an opening statement. Each candidate will be given a 1 minute period for a closing statement at the end of the forum. Questions for candidates will be randomly selected from those submitted. The candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to each question. The audience may submit questions on index cards provided by league members. Questions will be addressed to both candidates and should be limited to one subject only. Questions will be asked as time permits. We ask that you hold any applause until the end of the forum, after the closing statements. Oh, and please turn off your cell phones. How about that? Yeah, yeah. Anything that might buzz, ring, vibrate, etc. So wonderful. Thank you. Okay. So considering the results of the coin toss, Fern will begin with her opening statement.
Good evening. First, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters, Dr. Briceño, and everyone who worked behind the scenes to bring us together this evening, and all of you for taking time out of your night to join us. My campaign has been driven by the working people of the 120th District. This is not on
I was going to say we have a mic issue.
It's just not loud enough.
Talk right into it.
How about now?
No.
How about now?
There.
It wasn't on. Should I start over?
You are.
Okay. You'll have to hear it twice, I'm sorry. Okay. Good evening. First, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters, Dr. Briceño, and everyone who worked behind the scenes to bring us together this evening. And I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your night to join us. My campaign has been driven by the working people of the 120th District. I live here, and I chose to raise my family here. And lately, I've been disheartened over what I feel has been a lack of true representation in Harrisburg. Decisions are being made in Harrisburg and across the nation that are not necessarily reflective of our voices. And I will make sure that we are heard at the Capitol and not just an afterthought. Tonight I would like to present to you how I will be the best choice to carry our NEPA voices to Harrisburg. I have years of political experience lobbying for healthcare and education. You will learn tonight that I am also policy-driven, and I bring ideas to the table regardless of party. I implore you this evening to picture a representative working for you, who will be accessible, unencumbered, and not attached to any agenda. I would like to express to all of you that if elected, I will be a representative that keeps my finger on the pulse of this region. Thank you.
Aaron.
Thank you. Is this on now? Yes? No?
No.
Okay. Is it on? Can you hear me now if I speak? Okay. Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you, Fern, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to anybody who might be watching this as well. I want to thank everybody for their support over the last many years here representing our area. A lot of people talk about bipartisan. A lot of people say it, but few actually act on it. I'm proud upon my record what I've been able to do, being endorsed by a number of groups across the aisle, Republicans, Democrats, including every mayor in our district, regardless of party affiliation, the AFL-CIO, our building trades, the nurses here of our area, POSNAP, the Teachers Union, PSEA, PA Solar PAC, and many more that have endorsed my candidacy for working across the aisle to get real results here in the 120th District. I've turned my expertise into results, and that's from my serving on the Transportation Committee, Professional Licensure Committee, Gaming Oversight, and Finance Committees. I serve as one of our deputy whips. I also chair our Heroin and Opioid Prevention Education Caucus, where we have led on reforming policies here in Pennsylvania on what we can do across our country. I'm also proud of my work on our Tax Modernization Committee. I'm sure we'll be talking more about some of those issues as the forum continues.
All right. Thank you, Aaron and Fern, for your opening statements. Well, I have to remind you to hold your applause. No, you weren't listening to the rules in the beginning. No, I'm just kidding. So yes, so please do hold your applause. But we're allowed for the opening statements. Okay, that we got it out of our system. All right, so we'll begin with the first of our questions, and considering the order we began with, the question will first go to Aaron. And so that first question is, what knowledge, skills, or experience qualifies you to be a legislator?
So serving as the representative of the 120th District for the last 8 years, you learn that a lot of policy is nuanced. You know, serving on these committees and being able to learn the issues, that is what experience you bring to the table, and being able to know those issues inside and out. So in my time in office, I think it's 12 pieces of legislation now that I've had signed into law. Certainly one of the most prolific legislators who've actually produced real results. Not road namers and things like that, real substantive legislation here that has actually led to true policy changes here in northeastern Pennsylvania. Some of it we're seeing in our pocketbooks right now. We actually got a bill that I prime sponsored along with Representative Schnee, signed into law as part of our budget, that increased our property tax rent rebates for our seniors this year and people who are living on fixed incomes, making sure that we can support them and keep them in their homes. That takes a lot of effort to navigate our system to get that done. Being able to serve in this capacity and to work across the aisle and work with people is what this is about. And by doing that, when I first started running, I knocked on tens of thousands of doors to get to that point. I've got to meet so many people individually, and I'll continue bringing that to the legislature.
Thank you, Aaron. Fern.
Sorry. I've spent a number of years in the financial sector, working mostly with credit and other interest-based products, and language in legislation is just as important as financial disclosures. During the years I spent working toward healthcare legislation change in DC, I also worked in healthcare, both in facility and home settings. I've worked in the homes of our elderly population and have seen firsthand what they live without. Pennsylvania is home to the 8th largest elderly population in the country, and they need help with much more than their property taxes. I also worked in the disabled pediatric community, a community that my family is also a part of. And I know firsthand the obstacles our families face. My unique perspective from life experience brings a voice to the table that is often left out of the conversation, despite us being a talking point every election cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Fern. All right, moving on to the second question, and we'll start with Fern this time. What is the most important challenge facing our state, and how would you propose to address it?
There are many issues facing our Commonwealth, and the most important one is going to depend on who you ask. And what I think the most important thing we need to overcome is the obstacle that is stopping progress on solutions for any issue we face. Whatever you consider to be the most important issue to be addressed, the procedural rules in Harrisburg are preventing us from moving forward. Every session, the legislature decides on the rules that are going to be operating for the entire session. And every session for I'm not even sure how long, we have allowed for 6 gatekeepers to stop every single piece of legislation that we have. It doesn't matter how bipartisan some of the bills are. It doesn't matter how much Pennsylvanians would like to see some of these bills. This creates a stalemate for bipartisanship, and it's created by party leadership on the first day of every session. These rules are not set in stone. They are not law, and they are not part of our Constitution. And I feel strongly that Pennsylvania legislators need to stand firm against the rules package that would prevent the consideration of bipartisan bills, because it ultimately removes our power and ability to represent us. We have 253 legislators, and we should not be beholden to 6 of them.
Thank you, Fern. Aaron.
Thank you. There actually are rules in place that actually allow for discharge resolutions to get around committee chairs, which I think Fern's referring to in this question. It takes a majority vote of 102 members, which is exactly half of the 203 plus 1. So if you have 102 members that vote for discharge, you can go around the committee process. But the biggest issue that are facing people right now is inflation and jobs. People are having a hard time paying the bills. And we see utility prices, energy prices going through the roof, gas prices going through the roof. If people can't afford the basic necessities, they're making tough decisions on what they're going to afford in their household goods. And if we don't get this under control, it is the biggest issue that we are facing. This is a pocketbook issue of people dealing with issues at their kitchen table of making ends meet. It is a tough time for people out there. They are struggling. And so we look at what's going on with some of the unilateral stuff that the governor's done to increase our utility rates by 40%. 40%. That's why your utility rates are going up through an initiative called Reggie right now. We came 1 vote away from overturning that. 1 vote, but it's still in place. It's hurting jobs, it's hurting families, and we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help support working class individuals. This is a tough, tough time right now.
Thank you, Aaron. All right. So moving on to the third question, and Aaron, you'll address it first. So Pennsylvania's minimum wage has been stuck at $7.25 an hour since 2009. A full-time year-round minimum wage worker earns only $15,080 annually, less than the federal poverty threshold for a family of 2. Should this issue be addressed by the General Assembly, and if so, what actions would you support?
So this bill actually came up before about trying to increase our minimum wage. I supported it. What it was a balanced approach to actually do an incremental increase, right? It's not that we can go right from $7.25 all the way up to whatever that number is going to be, but our employers have been asking, give us some stability, give us some direction of where this is going to go. So not to go just an immediate jump. So part of this bill was to go incrementally up to $12 an hour here in Pennsylvania over several years to get to that point. But it was in balancing out some of the regulations and some of the things to help out some of our business owners as well, to help bear some of that brunt that's going on right now. Right now, there's no doubt people are struggling once again. And so if we don't talk about people being able to actually earn a living, afford their homes, be able to pay the bills, we're not talking about the major issues that are going on here in Pennsylvania and all across our district. So there's things that we can do to help get to those points, and things that I've supported to help to get there before, and there's more that we can and should be doing. And it takes a bipartisan approach to do it. Once again, we talked about some of the gatekeepers. You know, right now we have a divided government, a Republican House and Senate, a Democrat governor. It takes a lot to help navigate that system. I'm proud that I've been able to do that many times. Unfortunately, not on this topic.
Thanks, Aaron. Fern.
Thank you. The minimum wage in Pennsylvania is the absolute lowest that it can be. And all of the states surrounding us have increased their minimum wage. In fact, 65% of the country has already done this. We are far behind the times on this. And no one is no one is suggesting an extreme jump for our small business owners to be able to pay this. My colleague is right. I do agree with him that we do need to do it in increments. All of the states that have increased it did not allow small businesses to collapse under the change. And there are bills in our legislature right now, some with many co-sponsors, that would establish small business grants to help them increase their wages. Business owners who already are raising wages are actually saving money because they find that higher wages is better retention, and they don't need to spend money consistently to train new people. When people live under the poverty line, their purchasing power is diminished. Demand creates supply, not the other way around. And a healthy economy means a healthy middle class. And that is why we need to be raising the wage. Thank you.
Thank you, Fern. All right, question 4, and this will be to you first, Fern. Presently, only registered Democrats and Republicans can vote in the primary election. What are your thoughts on opening primary elections to unaffiliated or independent voters?
I think we should open up to primary elections. We hear a lot, especially since 2020, that every legal vote should matter, and yet we have over 1 million legally registered voters in Pennsylvania who are not affiliated with the Democratic or Republican Party, who are not allowed to vote in the primaries. I believe that they should be participating in the process to choose our candidates. I think it would produce more well-rounded candidates, because they would have to stop appealing to one far end of a party to another, the far left or the far right. And that is how we lead the way to extremism, and we don't need that anymore. So yeah, I fully support opening up our primaries.
Thanks, Fern. Aaron.
I actually think we can go farther than opening our primaries. I actually think we should have open elections where, regardless of anybody's party affiliation, they should all be put on the same ballot and vote for whoever you want in the primary. The top 2, at minimum, at least move on, but allow people to vote for who they want. Our system is creating too much extremism. We need to have people who are willing to get in the middle, work, get into the weeds, and get things done. And so if we put everybody on the same ballot together, let you pick whoever you want, whoever you think is the most qualified, whoever you want to cast that ballot with, that's who you should be able to vote. Our party system was never meant to be the way it is. In George Washington's farewell address, when he left the presidency in 1796, he gave our country one piece of advice: beware political factions. The system we've built here today is unfortunately one that isn't working for the majority of people. We get caught up in the 10% of extreme here, the 10% of extreme on the others, when 80% of the people agree on a lot of these issues. If we get people on the same ballot, regardless of party, let you as individuals decide. Let the people pick their elected officials, and that's going to help make a better system.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, question 5. We'll start with you, Aaron, on this one. Presently, a bill to amend the PA Constitution passed the General Assembly. In order for voters to approve or reject the amendments, it must again be approved by the newly elected legislators. The amendments would expand the General Assembly's power to reject regulations, require government-issued ID to vote, require the Auditor General to audit elections, change the way the Lieutenant Governor is selected, and add language declaring the state constitution does not grant any right relating to abortion. Would you vote in favor of these amendments? Why or why not?
So I'm not in favor of this bill that happened. Unfortunately, when the vote happened in the legislature, I had a family emergency and was not able to be there on this day that this vote happened. But here, the big thing of this was about the abortion clause that happened in this particular piece of legislation. Saying that there is no right whatsoever in the Constitution, I just don't think that that's right. You know, if you have somebody whose life is on the line, if you have a mother who's pregnant, I think they have a right to an abortion if their health is at risk here. So one of the big things that obviously has changed in recent Supreme Court decisions, now here in Pennsylvania, our law is 24 weeks. And that has been the law here for a number of years. It's the Abortion Control Act. Something I've supported from the beginning is exceptions in that regard for rape, incest, the health of the mother, and viability. Viability typically being at roughly the 20-week mark when a child can live outside the womb and survive. And so, to me, that's what we should be focused on in regard to those policies, and I think that's an important part of what that constitutional amendment was about.
Thanks, Aaron. Fern.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear the sudden change on my opponent's stance on abortion. He was staunchly pro-life for years, so I commend him for changing there. I am pro-choice, and I do not believe that this is a legislative decision. This is a private decision between a woman, her doctor, her spiritual advisors, her family, whomever she wants. Not local politicians, as someone might have said the other night. Now, I don't think that we should be ignoring the other amendment proposals here, because it is up to Pennsylvania state agencies to set regulations, and our legislature has become very power hungry, and I don't think that it should be up to them to overturn these regulations that have been put into place for a reason. As far as voter ID goes, it's not the act of handing somebody identification, it's the obstacles that get in many people's ways in order to obtain that identification to hand to somebody. And also, I don't think that we should be handing over our choice for lieutenant governor. I think that it will damage the very foundation of democracy when we take the power of choosing our candidates out of our hands and putting them in the power of the legislature or any one person. Thank you.
Thank you, Fern. All right, next question, and we'll start with you, Fern, on this one. Would you support the legalization of recreational marijuana? Why or why not?
Yes, I would. I believe that we are far behind the times on this. 19 states have already legalized recreational marijuana, and as well as our nation's capital down in D.C. They have all reaped the benefits from the tax revenue that we have seen. There's a lot of data on it. We do not need to cut corners and do things like decriminalization first. That is a waste of time. That is a waste of our taxpayer dollars. And if we can follow the models of some of our other states and cater them to Pennsylvania, we can benefit immensely. The Colorado model, for example, they funded their school system, which if we did that, we know it's going to what? Decrease our property taxes. It's going to add relief for everybody and help keep our senior citizens in their homes, which is a problem we know that they're facing. Or we can establish a fund for education as well as our property taxes. There was more than enough revenue in Colorado's first year to bring their schools up to par. Oh, sorry, my time is up. Thank you.
So
Thanks,
I just want to quickly comment on regulations here. One of the important things, I mentioned this quickly before, but when the governor unilaterally has the ability to raise our utility rates by 40%, just by a signature of his pen, no vote from the legislature, no discussion from the legislature, that's wrong. So part of this regulation is limiting if the governor can do a certain action beyond a certain monetary amount, whether it's $1 million, $5 million. What's that limit that he could do by executive order without having to get legislative approval? There needs to be a balance between that, and it doesn't exist right now. In regard to marijuana, I'm proud to say I was part of the task force that drafted the medical marijuana bill. It was one of the first things I did when I was in the legislature. I'm proud of what we've done. We've gotten a lot of recognition for the legislation we've done from people all over, including those from Colorado. We have a major access issue right now in our underserved populations. I do believe we should be doing decriminalization. Ask people who get arrested or are incarcerated. I think that matters to them of whether this is important or not to them. And I think even people like President Biden have talked about expunging these records. That is something we should be looking at. And I think it's a generational issue that I think people do care about.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, question 7, and we'll start with Aaron on this one. Do you support or oppose mail-in voting in Pennsylvania? Why or why not?
So part of the election issues going on right now is that there has not been a clear and concise rules to what's going on in regard to our elections right now. Right now, they're not uniform across Pennsylvania. And so when you have different rules being applied differently in every county, it's wrong. We actually had a PA Supreme Court decision that said each county can decide how they're going to count their mail-in ballots. That's our current PA Supreme Court law. It mattered in a state Senate seat where it was between a Republican and a Democrat shortly after the 2020 election, Ziccarelli versus Brewster, on should we be counting ones without signatures, without dates? It was left up to each county to make it their determination themselves. That is wrong. We need uniform laws across. We have the Equal Protection Clause of our Constitution for a reason. And so when we talk about how we are going to apply election law, it needs to be uniform across the board, and that is not what's happening right now in Pennsylvania. Each county should not be making their own rules, because we can have a county that all of a sudden decides are not going to count mail-in ballots at all whatsoever, whereas others are. And that's the danger we're on right now with the current Supreme Court case in Pennsylvania. And I think that's a real troublesome decision that we've had here.
Thanks, Aaron. Fern.
Hi. Okay, I do support mail-in ballots, and I wonder why it is when Act 77 passed, my opponent didn't request an amendment to do what he proposes, to make all of our elections across the state equal. Now, I don't think that state government should be infringing upon local government. For decades, the way that we run our elections have been up to the county, and we have run into very little problems. We have one of the safest elections in the nation. That is what was determined for the 2020 election, and I think that Pennsylvania should be proud of that. When we have mail-in voting, more people get to vote. People who would have a harder time getting to the polls, people who cannot afford to take off work, people in rural areas that might not have transportation, people who don't have transportation in general. I don't think that we should be doing anything to hinder people's rights to vote. There should not be as many obstacles as there are. And I think when we opened up mail-in voting, no excuse mail-in voting, my apologies, we did that. That was a really fantastic decision on the legislature's part. And I am personally grateful to have that, because as a parent, I often have hard times getting childcare in the middle of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Fern. All right, question 9. So we'll begin, question 8. We're on question 8. So we'll start with Fern on this one. So what should state government do to provide an equitable, quality public education for all children pre-K through grade 12?
I think that we do need to take a closer look at our public education. There is an extremely low lack of oversight. We did have an audit team in place to oversee our education. It was far too small, in my opinion, and our Auditor General, Tim DeFore, disbanded this year without anything in place. Even our Department of Education says that's not something that they have in place for them to be able to do, even if that was their wheelhouse. I think that the lack of oversight means we don't know where those funds are going. We don't know where they're being wasted. And I don't think parents need to be in a position to ask why it is that we can afford a football field, but not afford the supports for our special education needs. I think that if we were able to know where the money is being funneled, we can see where it's being used, where it's not needed, and reallocate it to an area where it is needed. And I do believe that we're going to need to invest in our education to strengthen our public schools. I don't believe it should be done for vouchers where we're going to end up paying for wealthy children to go to private schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Fern. I'm getting in trouble because you're not holding your applause. Do you want me to get in trouble?
Well,
Please hold your applause.
Yeah,
Aaron.
no, nobody wants you to get in trouble.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
well, just quickly, the Auditor General is still doing audits, and I see the president of the Wyoming
Oh,
Valley
yes,
West
but he's
School-
not doing audits on education. Oh, my apologies. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just a reaction
Well,
sometimes.
that is also not accurate. I'm looking at the president of the school board of Wyoming Valley West right now, where the Auditor General has just engaged in an audit of Wyoming Valley West that he is currently, was just announced within the last couple of months, that the Auditor General is reviewing the school board finances of Wyoming Valley West. I'm looking at the school board president right now, who signed the letter to do this, who has been on the emails to do this, so that is not accurate. When we talk about equitable funding of education, I'm proud to be one of the people who have worked across the aisle to do this. I'm endorsed by PSEA, our teachers union, for my work on this. And one of the things we need to do to make education more equitable is finding a way of balancing those issues. And that's about trying to make sure getting away from old funding formulas that, such as Hold Harmless and others, that underfund our areas here in Luzerne County, underfund our schools. So if we're able to change it to a more equitable system based on income taxes, sales taxes, that are going to help balance it out, reduce property taxes, that's a better way that we can fund our system and make sure that kids have a right to a quality education here in Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, next question, and we'll begin with you, Aaron, on this one. What are your thoughts on clean and renewable sources of energy in Pennsylvania to help combat climate change?
So another issue I'm very proud of. I'm proud to be endorsed by PA Solar PAC. I'm the only Republican they endorsed in this election, and I'm proud of my work that I've done on these issues. One of the issues that I have been working on is an issue called community solar. I'm looking in the audience to one of our union members who works with IBEW and also another member from LiUNA who will benefit from the work going on with issues like community solar that will put hardworking men and women out to work to put these all throughout Pennsylvania. $3 billion minimum, $3 billion that we are aware of right now that's ready to come here to Pennsylvania, pay prevailing wages all throughout our communities, and give you an energy choice. If you want to subscribe to solar energy, it gives you the opportunity to actually be a subscriber and benefit from solar that might not necessarily be on your property, but that you can get the benefits of in the free market. And so I'm really proud of this legislation. I've worked very hard on that. We came very close to getting it done in this session. I'm very confident that we're going to get this done in the near future. I've been working hard on this. Once again, I'm proud that I'm the only Republican that PA Solar PAC has endorsed in this election cycle.
Thanks, Aaron. Fern.
I'm glad you brought up that solar community bill because the only time I ever heard about it was during the election cycle. And it's extremely convenient to be able to have 6 gatekeepers for every bill to stop them from leaving committee so we can support solar energy and vote for fossil fuel. So, and I think the transition to clean energy needs to be a collaborative effort. We need representatives from all over Pennsylvania to be at the table to create a plan that transitions us into renewable energy without hurting our workers. The combined experience of our legislators, who come from all different walks of life, is going to be essential in finding a solution that will be reasonable not only to us, but to everyone across the Commonwealth. Nobody wants to make any extreme moves that are going to upend our lives, and that's why we need a practical plan in place. If Pennsylvania can birth democracy and come together to write the Constitution, which we did, I think that makes Pennsylvanians the most qualified people to come together to form and implement a plan that benefits our future. And I think everyone can agree that we deserve to breathe clean air and drink clean water, and that our children and grandchildren deserve that too.
Thanks, Fern. All right, next question. We have some audience questions, so I'm happy to pepper these in. So, given the recent spike in violence targeting the LGBTQ plus community, more than doubling since 2019, what will you do to protect LGBTQ plus citizens from violance? That's to you, Fern.
To me?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Sorry.
That's to you. No, it's, hey, we're keeping track. We're doing our best.
We're all in this together.
Exactly.
For far too long, our LGBT community has not had equal protections. In fact, the majority of the protections they have are from an executive order that has been passed down from governor to governor. And although I'm glad that it has remained in place for as long as it has, there is a great worry that one of our gubernatorial candidates will rip that away from us. We need to codify those protections. We need to work to make sure that everybody has actual legal equality here. And that is something that we have, I'm sorry, not we, I'm not in the legislature yet. It is something the legislature has failed to do for decades, and it's long past time that we stop. Or I'm sorry, that long past time that we get it done.
Thanks, Fern. Aaron.
Thank you. I'm proud to be one of, if not the only, Republican co-sponsor of the anti-discrimination legislation that there is in Harrisburg. I've been a co-sponsor of it and supporter of it since every term that I've been in office. I also agree. This is something that should have been long done. People shouldn't be discriminated against whatever they do. You know, whatever they believe in, whoever they love, nobody should be discriminated against. That's the world we live in. That's what equality means in America. But, you know, we've taken some substantial steps here and things that we've done, and I'm proud of what we've done in regard to mental health. Just today, we announced the U.S. headquarters of COOTH, locating here a publicly traded company in London, moving their headquarters here to Fortyford in Luzerne County, where they are going to take on students and help them through these issues. They are going to be, right now they have 100,000 students that they're going to be covering, including Wyoming Valley West and Wyoming area, amongst geographically diverse schools. But taking that to the next step of being able to support students that are struggling and having these issues, having suicidal thoughts, being bullied, having somebody to reach out to and be able to do that, that is so critical. And that was something I have been a leader on. We've gotten that bill. I had 3 bills, 2022, 2023, 2024. That got signed as part of our budget. I'm really proud of that record.
Thanks, Aaron.
If I may, I'd like to thank my opponent for his views on equality. I think it's fantastic that we can find room to agree there. I am a little concerned that we're linking the LGBT community to mental health. I'm pretty sure that we should not.
It was about
what do you call
crime.
them? I'm sorry?
The question was about crime.
It was part of the question. We don't need to, but I didn't hear you
okay.
address crime, actually.
We have addressed this question.
You're right.
So let's move on
Thank
to the
you.
next one. And so we're on to question 11. This is another one from the audience. And so, Aaron, this is to you first. How can Pennsylvania meet the need to fix highways and bridges?
So this is a great question. Right now, we have the highest gas tax here in Pennsylvania. For a long time, this is an outdated model. As we have federal guidelines that keep on pushing us to make our vehicles more fuel-friendly, more efficient, hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles. Right now, electric vehicles aren't paying the gas tax, obviously. They aren't paying to help fund our roads and bridges, and it's a major issue that we have in shortfalls as costs are going up through inflation. The costs of paving these roads are more difficult to get done. So it's something that we need to be focused on. It's something we need to keep focusing on and moving forward with. Just a couple days ago, on WILK, my opponent didn't even know that the state paves roads and bridges. She was asked a question and said that the state doesn't do that, that the county does. So
That's not true.
But WILK, you can check it out.
Yes, you can, and I urge that you do.
So it's something that we need to be talking about, how to make sure that we do this across the Commonwealth. And I think that's an important issue of something we need to be talking about. We passed a material specs bill to make sure that we're using high-quality materials on our roadways, and that's what we need to be doing. Make sure we're working harder, smarter, not harder.
Thanks, Aaron. Fern.
Thank you. Excellent question. We do have the highest gas tax in the nation. And I think that part of the problem is that it goes into non-discretionary funds. And I think we need to make sure we're allocating those funds to PennDOT to make sure that they have what they need to be able to fix our roads and bridges. We are going to see a windfall of funds from the infrastructure bill passed by Democrats in Congress, so we can actually use those funds to do that, so we don't have instances like we did in Pittsburgh when, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the bridge, but I know Fern was in the name.
The Fern Hollow Bridge.
Thank you, the
I'm
Fern
from
Hollow
Pittsburgh.
Bridge. Yes, I do. I don't associate it with me. I promise you I am not hollow. And I do commend the legislature for passing things to make our roads stronger, because how many times do we see the Pennsylvania flower, the orange cone, on the sides of the road because they're fixing a road that we've already fixed? I see it every year. I live right off the Cross Valley, and every year they're fixing it again. And I think that is things that we need to stop seeing.
Thanks, Fern. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have another question from the audience. Wonderful. So this will go to you first, Fern. It's about mental health services, or the lack thereof, is at the forefront of the gun violence debates. Can Pennsylvania afford increases in mental health services for youth and adults?
I think we need to find a way to pay for it if you think that we don't. We don't have the infrastructure in place here to have some of the mental health service plans that are being proposed to us. And with Commonwealth Health just pulling out and leaving us high and dry, they just revoked many of the mental health services that we need in the area. So I think that we need to devise a way. I think we need to sit down and not just reach across the aisle, walk across the aisle to figure out what we need to do, because our mental health is important. Mental wellness is how we take care of ourselves, and it's how we are able to take care of others. So that is something we shouldn't shortchange on. So whether or not you can have the funds available, which I believe that we do actually. I believe the last budget that was passed had a lot allocated toward mental health. But we need to make sure that that money is utilized to put the infrastructure in place that we can actually deliver these services to the people.
Thank you, Fern. Aaron.
So a few years ago, I received a national award for Legislator of the Year from the National Conference of State Legislators for my work in mental health. I have been an advocate in this area for years, since the beginning of my time in office. My legislation helped pass the first ever adoption of the mental health parity law here in Pennsylvania. Mental health parity is now law here because of my legislation. Lots of things that we need to be doing here in this area, but most importantly, I want to get back to Couth. What Couth is doing here, we've got money as part of our budget to every single school district here in Pennsylvania. Every single public school got money for mental health in this budget thanks to my advocacy. I'm proud of that. We put a $100 million allocation specific for mental health to everyone. On top of that, we were able to bring in a partner like Couth, who is a publicly traded company out of the UK, provides 95% of mental health services to students all across the United Kingdom. We brought them here. They located their U.S. headquarters in 40 Fort, Pennsylvania. We just announced it today. They are going to be doing a lot of work here across our Commonwealth, and I think we're going to be talking more about what they're going to be doing here across our country. Big stuff happening with them. I'm proud of what we were able to get done.
Every public school gets it, and yet we voted for a bill that would send our public school students to private schools.
Please keep your comments to the 1 minute time period that's allotted.
You're right, my apologies.
All right, so we're moving on to question, this is our 13th question, another audience question. And so we will begin with Aaron on this one. This is to you first. What is your position on term limits?
So I'm a supporter of term limits. I'm a co-sponsor of legislation that would allow us to have 8-year term limits. I think that we were meant to be a citizen legislature, but the problem is in our system, as Fern has alluded to earlier, is that our system, it's seniority-based. Chairmanships are based on seniority. And unless everybody's playing by the same rules and adopting by it, if people were to be there only for 8 years and some were to be hold to it and some others weren't, it would negatively impact our area and our advocacy in the legislature. But I think there's even more that we could be doing in regard to government reform. I'm our sponsor of our gift ban legislation. I think we need to get some redistricting reform done. I'm somebody that doesn't take per diems. These are the issues that we need to do. I'm proud that I'm the most frugal legislator in the Commonwealth. I have been named that by the Citizens' Voice. I'm proud of that record of what I've been able to do. It's your money, not mine. And I think sometimes people go to Harrisburg and forget that, but that is our job. And so being somebody that is a citizen legislature, that's what it was meant to be when our system was created. And I think that people actually moving in office in time is important for our system.
Thanks, Aaron. Fern.
I find it ironic that my opponent supports 8-year term limits. He's currently in his 8th year. He committed to serving only 8 years as a campaign promise the first time he was elected, and here he sits. I think as long as voters have a chance to elect different people to these seats as frequently as they do, it's going to create a change and encourage participation and turnover in these positions. We just need to ensure that we are keeping the voters in control to continue to hold our legislators accountable. I would be open to legislation that helps protect the balance of power. I'm not so sure we have that right now when we do have career politicians that are blocking the way for legislation that we could be implementing to help the people. So, yeah.
Thanks, Fern.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next question this will start with you, Fern. What can Pennsylvania legislators do to make districts like the 120th more business friendly?
Sorry to write that down. We actually have a very healthy amount of small businesses here in Northeast PA, and I think that we could be doing more to support them in the form of tax breaks for our small businesses, and there are bills in the legislature right now that would allow them to have grants, and again, they are stuck in committee. So yeah, I think small businesses are the backbone of this country, and I think that we need to be doing more to support them and less to be bringing in corporations that we are promised that they are going to give us jobs with the trickle-down effect, and we know that doesn't work. I think that we would have a stronger economy if we continue to support small business and encourage them to open up.
Thank you. Aaron.
So our small business tax package actually got signed into law this year as our budget. It has actually been vetoed by the governor, I think, in every successive term that I've been in office. It has been passed, put on his desk, and been vetoed. So our small business owners are looking for issues like like-kind exchanges, bonus depreciation, issues that affect them on how the federal law treats them different than state law. It hurts our small businesses here all across not only Luzerne County, but the Commonwealth. So I'm glad we were able to get that done as part of this year's budget. That really is important. Lowering our corporate net income tax rate in half, another big issue that we got done. But, attracting companies, you mentioned about big companies. The companies like Nacero that are going to come here and move to our area and have a minimum $6 billion investment that's going to have ripple effects all across our area are the huge economic opportunities that we have here in Pennsylvania. We need to take advantage of our resources like natural gas to our north of us, make sure that we're using it to our advantage, make sure that Pennsylvanians are benefiting from it, and that we are actually creating jobs from this, creating 50% carbon-reduced gasoline supported by the president, by our congressmen, by people from all different parts of political affiliation. I'm glad I support it. Unfortunately, I'm sorry that you don't.
All right, question 15, which comes from the audience. We'll start with you, Aaron. Housing prices and rent costs have been outpacing local wages. Can a legislator out of a district like the 120th do anything to help their citizens?
Yeah, a big piece of that is our property taxes. You look at a system where that property taxes are what funds our education system. And so if we don't actually get away, property taxes started before we had income taxes. It was deemed too intrusive to know how much money people were making. So we had property taxes. They'd have a tax assessor come over and say, you have this many acres of land, here's how much you should pay. Well, now we have income taxes. They're now legal here. And taking into account people's ability to pay is actually a good thing so that people aren't forced to sell their homes. So when we have these situations of housing prices going through the roof as property taxes go up year after year, it's hurting people, and they can't afford it because of these increases. So even with renters or homeowners, and I'm glad to say we passed our first-time home buyer legislation as well, another big piece of legislation to help encourage that. But renters are also paying those property taxes. They get passed on to them in their rent that they're paying. They might not be paying it directly, but those property taxes are what's increasing. It's not these mortgage rates that are variable of why they're going up. It's the taxes they're paying.
Thanks, Aaron. Fern.
Thank you. Yeah, property taxes do go a lot into it, and I've been saying for years that renters are paying it indirectly. And again, I go back to legalizing marijuana, where the revenue from that would help our property taxes, and the lower our property taxes are, the less our rent is going to be. Although it is an issue that when our property taxes go up and our rent is raised, we can't always trust that our property owners are going to reduce it when the taxes are reduced. And that is another problem that I actually don't believe the legislature can address. So yeah, again, the revenue I think from legalizing marijuana would be helpful not just for our schools, which is a big part of our property taxes. It would also be helpful for our property taxes, and it would keep our elderly people in their home, and it would keep all of us a little bit worse off for wear. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, for the next one, we'll start with you, Fern. And so this next question, is it important to encourage funding for more police officers?
I believe it is important to encourage fair funding for police officers. I have talked to several of the precincts in the district, and some feel that they are adequately funded, that they do have everything they need, and some feel that they haven't been appropriately funded in years. I think it's important for our boys in blue to have everything they need, that they should be able to protect and serve without going without. So yes, it is important to fund our police officers, but I believe it's important to make sure that they are being funded thoroughly.
Thank you. Aaron.
I'm proud to be endorsed by our FOP, our state troopers, our corrections officers, on the work that I've been able to do in the legislature. Supporting our police isn't just something you say, it's something you do. And when they need help, we need to make sure we get those resources out. I'm proud of what we've been able to do to be unanimously endorsed by our FOP, by our state troopers, by our corrections, because I work hand in hand with them to make sure that they get every resource available to make sure that they have it. We work together for the first time ever in Luzerne County. We have a regional police department, recognizing that we needed to work together to make sure we had adequate police services. The Wyoming Area Regional Police Department came together, 5 towns, working through the difficult politics of bringing together 5 towns to form one police department. They voted on it. They made it happen. I'm also happy to hear you talk about supporting our police. There's organizations that are supporting you that are for defunding the police, which gets me very concerned about our area and what is important here to making sure our families are safe and supporting them. So I'm glad to hear that as well.
Oh, I'm glad you have some extra time. Could you please name those supporters?
The Democrat Socialists of America.
They don't.
Okay, we'll move on. And we are coming around to about the close of the forum. So one more question before closing statements. And so this will go to Aaron first. So with such a divide between Republicans and Democrats, how can we bring citizens closer together?
Well, that's what I've always prided myself on doing, right? I think everybody who knows me here knows I wear an orange tie every day as a symbol against the two-party system. I work hard to make sure that I represent people on both sides. You can see it just from the people who are endorsing me and supporting me in my election. Every mayor here in our area, regardless of party affiliation, has supported me and endorsed me. It's because we work together. I don't look at them and say, what party are you? Actually, when the mayor of 44 got appointed, I didn't even know whether he was a Republican or a Democrat. I called him, congratulated him, and we've been working together ever since. I don't care about party affiliation, and when it comes to legislation, I don't care about that either. It's about doing what's right for our working class families. I've put my money where my mouth is. You can see it by my endorsements. You don't need to take my word for it. To be the only Republican endorsed by a number of these organizations shows that I do it. You don't need to take my word for it. Take these people's words for it if you don't believe me. They're the ones stepping up, endorsing me, supporting me. So many people talk about it, but when we come into Harrisburg and when you start getting pulled in every direction, I'm the one that puts up the vote and makes sure I do what's right for our families here in Luzerne County.
Thanks, Aaron. Fern.
Thank you. I've spoken with many people in our district, and I will tell you that the political division among people here in Luzerne County is not nearly as bad as the national media would lead us to believe. The division is, unfortunately, present mostly in our legislators. And the best way to combat that is to make sure that we don't reelect those who speak out about unity, but are actually complicit with the partisan divide. Which is why I worked hard to make sure the voters in the 120th district have a choice in representation, because I do have a very clever opponent who introduces bills that are the opposite of what he votes for. He does vote mostly along party lines. That is not bipartisanship. That is creating two truths so you can sell whatever product you would like to sell, whatever party. And I'm sorry, I do know that I have some time left on this question, and I don't have a lot of filler that's going to pump myself up with people who have endorsed electoral boards, not the entire organization. Thank you.
All right, that wraps the question. So we'll move on to closing statements. So we'll begin with Fern.
No, we begin with Aaron.
Yeah.
Oh, my apologies. Begin with Aaron for a closing statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Fern. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you for hosting this forum. Thank you to the voters out there. When you get elected, whatever happens on November 8th, the job is to represent everyone. Doesn't matter what party you are. When you go to Harrisburg, it's your job to represent everyone. I put forward the rule change that I have been proud to be the sponsor of that would get rid of the aisle altogether in Harrisburg. The seats are actually numbered when you go there. It has a number right on the seat. That whatever district you're representing, you would sit in that seat. Time for Republicans, Democrats, everybody to sit together, regardless of whatever your political party is, and end the aisle. It's time to do that already. I've done that. I'm always proud to work across the aisle and get that done. Bringing people together to make things that seem impossible, like the waste coal bank in Sawyersville, that nobody thought would happen. Working with our Democrat governor on a waste coal initiative that helped bring that down. These are the things in divided government that we have to work together and do. Knocked on doors, tens of thousands of doors. It's my honor and privilege to serve you. It's my honor and privilege to hopefully continue serving you, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to again thank everyone for tonight, the League of Women Voters, Dr. Briceño, Aaron, thank you for agreeing to do this, and also all of you in the audience. And as I've stated here tonight, I will be the representative that will stand up for our local business owners, and I cannot be bought by special interest groups. I'm coming to the table with real, tangible policy ideas with a desire to give back to our communities, not keep taking from them. I want to stop giving corporations big tax breaks and start giving them to the people in our district instead. We need to stop the deceptive legislation that keeps reoccurring, where promises are made to help our taxpayers, but in the end, only line the pockets of those who write the bills. I will make your voices heard and advocate for us. I will bring back funding to our communities, from our underfunded fire stations, our first responders, and to our lack of mental health services and the infrastructure that needs to be in place. And I am willing to work across the aisle to get the job done, because your concerns are my concerns. So once again, I implore you to picture a representative working for you, who will be accessible, unencumbered, and not attached to any agenda. Thank you.
We can applaud. Thank you so much to our candidates. Thank you all for being here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Wilkes-Barre area. This forum will be broadcast on Service Electric TV, Channel 9, at 6 p.m. this Sunday, October 30th, Halloween Eve. And a link will be posted on the League website for the Luzerne County Government Programming YouTube channel at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, October 31st. Okay, so guess what? Everyone remember to vote, right? So do so either by mail or in person. And please consider joining the League, which is a nonpartisan organization. Membership is open to people of all genders, and the League works to educate the community about voting and the democratic process. Thank you all for spending your time here this evening.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Have a good night. Thank you.